That's the main thing. Just tell us your feelings after that match.
Probably the same as what everyone watched. Absolute dire, absolute joker game. You know, I play darts. I've always wanted to play darts. You know, everyone says, why do you get cheesed off with darts?
These are 7 darts players who got under the skin of one of the most talented and most combustible men the sport has ever produced. Gary Anderson, 2-time world champion, the Flying Scotsman, and the man with the shortest fuse for gamesmanship in professional darts history. Anderson operates by a code that hasn't changed in 20 years. Throw your darts, get out of the way, and let the better player win. Simple enough on paper, but player after player has violated that code over his career, and not once has Anderson stayed quiet about it. What follows are the 7 most documented, most dramatic, and most entertaining clashes of his life in darts. This one wasn't really a feud, and Anderson would be the first to tell you that. But a moment happened in this rivalry that belongs in any serious conversation about Anderson's career, because it captures exactly the kind of thing that gets under his skin. January 4th, 2015, World Championship Final at Alexandra Palace. Anderson against Phil Taylor, the 16-time world champion, and for Anderson, it was the biggest match of his life. The final went to a deciding 7th set, ended 7 sets to 6, and set a then record of 32 combined 180s, which still stands as one of the greatest finals the sport has produced. But the moment most people carry from that match has nothing to do with the darts. After the 2nd set, Taylor reached over and tickled Anderson under the chin at the Oki in the World Championship final. A small gesture, almost playful, but from a man who had won that title 16 times, it was something else entirely. Quiet psychological warfare from the master of the mental game, a man who understood that dominance doesn't always need a fist. Anderson didn't crumble. He fought back through the sets, won the decider, and became world champion for the first time. Taylor was gracious afterward, telling reporters, "The doubles cost me. When it got to 6 sets, all I thought, I've got you now. But this fella did a job on me." And here's what separates this from every other entry on the list. Anderson has never spoken a bad word about Taylor. In August 2020, when Sky Sports asked him to name his greatest ever game, he picked that final without hesitation. A lot of the boys now coming through will never get to play Phil Taylor on that stage. He's won it 16 times. If you're going to beat someone, it's got to be him, just to put that big notch on your belt. A delayed handshake after the match caught some attention at the time, with Taylor walking to get water rather than immediately congratulating Anderson, though the pair were later shown in good spirits. The chin tickle, the delay, the sheer weight of beating a 16-time champion, none of it was personal, but all of it was felt. Peter Wright is Anderson's Scotland teammate. Together they won the World Cup of Darts in 2019, making Scotland the first non-English and non-Dutch nation to lift that trophy. Anderson has defended Wright publicly, praised him publicly, and stood beside him on stage more times than most partnerships manage. By every available measure, these two men get on. So the question is obvious, what's Wright doing on this list? 2016, Premier League Darts. Wright needed Anderson to beat Adrian Lewis to keep his playoff hopes alive, and what followed didn't come from Wright at all. The trouble came from his wife Jo, who sent a private Twitter message to a fan suggesting Anderson would deliberately lose the match to help Lewis reach the playoffs. That message got out. Adrian Lewis's response on Twitter was not measured. "You are an absolute disgrace. It's not Peter, as he's told me firsthand he doesn't use Twitter. You are one horrible woman. Nobody in darts I know of would ever throw a game." Joe Wright claimed the message was sarcastic and taken out of context, but the damage had already spread. The fallout was enough to pull Wright out of the Scotland squad entirely. He withdrew from the 2016 World Cup in Frankfurt, citing private reasons, and Robert Thornton stepped in as Anderson's partner instead. Anderson never launched a public attack on Wright over any of it. The two reconciled, partnered up again the following year, and by December 2025, Anderson was the one defending Wright publicly when Van Gerwen suggested Wright should call it a career. "We can't play well all the time. People think we're robots. Just give folk a break." None of that changes what the accusation was. Suggesting that Anderson might fix a match, even indirectly, even in a private message, cuts to the core of everything he believes darts should be. For a period in 2016, it fractured one of the sport's most iconic national partnerships. Joe Cullen is a capable Premier League professional and, until the evening of March 24, 2022, he had no documented history of conflict with Anderson whatsoever. What happened in Rotterdam that night changed that in front of a live television audience. Premier League Night 7, Rotterdam ahoy. Anderson led 5 legs to 3 and held 4 match darts, all 4 missed. Cullen came back, sealed a 74 checkout in the deciding leg, and won the match 6 legs to 5, and then the camera stayed rolling. As Cullen moved in for the handshake, Anderson leaned close and whispered something. Cullen's reply was caught clearly. "What are you talking about?" The argument continued for several seconds on stage before Anderson walked off, with Cullen following him into the corridor to continue it. Cullen explained in his post-match interview exactly what had been said. Anderson had called him a cheat. For want of a better expression, he called me a cheat. "I've done absolutely nothing wrong. My conscience is clear." I said, "Watch every camera back you've got." Anderson's belief, based on Cullen's account, was that Cullen had been standing too close behind him at the oche during the crucial final legs, encroaching on his space at the worst possible moment. What made the whole thing stranger was Anderson's complete silence. No interview followed, no statement, no clarification of any kind. The accusation sat there, unexplained and unretracted, from the man who threw it. A week later in Birmingham, Cullen was still waiting. "If he wants to speak to me, I'll be happy to speak to him. If he doesn't, that's no problem." Cullen also noted, "I've got a lot of respect for Gary. He's a great ambassador for the sport, but I think he let himself down a bit tonight." No further drama followed, but Anderson never withdrew the word cheat, and Cullen never forgot it. 20 plus years, 5 World Championship finals between them, and one word that has followed this rivalry for the better part of a decade: part-timer. October 2022, World Grand Prix. Van Gerwen had just beaten Anderson in straight sets, stepped up to the microphone and told Online Darts, "In the practice room, everyone knows we call him the part-timer." The label stuck so well that Van Gerwen was still using it 2 years later, telling reporters at the 2024 European Championship, "He's one of the best players I have ever seen in my life, but he's also a part-timer." Anderson's answer arrived at the 2024 Grand Slam with the particular dry wit that only he can deliver. Just imagine, a part-timer winning a TV tournament. The PDC would be having a nightmare. He also shrugged it off in a separate interview. "It doesn't matter if I'm playing Michael van Gerwen or a 98-year-old granny in an exhibition, but this rivalry carries harder edges than banter." At the 2021 Grand Slam, Van Gerwen walked past Anderson mid-match and appeared to direct words at him, which left Anderson visibly furious. Van Gerwen's camp claimed he was muttering to himself for motivation. The footage didn't settle the argument either way. December 2025, before their last 16 meeting at the World Championship, Van Gerwen announced, "Gary said so much crap in his life, I don't believe him anymore. He retires every year." Anderson won 4 sets to 1, and his post-match summary was a single observation about Van Gerwen's missed doubles. "Michael missing all those doubles," I went, "what the hell's going on here?" The numbers between them tell a long story. Their 2017 World Championship final produced 42 combined 180s, with Anderson alone hitting 22 in that match, a single match World Championship record, and Van Gerwen winning 7 sets to 3. But Anderson has beaten him in the matches that define careers: the 2015 World Championship semi-final, the 2015 Premier League final, the 2018 Grand Slam semi-final, and that 2026 World Championship knockout. Anderson put the whole thing in perspective himself years earlier. "There are very few players for whom I can raise my game. For Michael, I'm always up for it. Off the stage, we get on fine. But when it's just me and him up there, it's a different kettle of fish. With respect, I think Michael likes to dish it out, but he doesn't like to take it. That's fine by me. I like a good old-fashioned tear-up." Van Gerwen may be Anderson's greatest rival, but Mensur Suljović is something else. Suljović is Anderson's greatest torment. The Austrian-Serbian player throws darts slowly, not just at a measured pace, but glacially, tapping each dart twice with 2 fingers before releasing it, drawing out legs and sets and entire matches into something that resembles an endurance event. For Anderson, a man who believes darts should move at pace with no theatre and no delay, this isn't a style preference, it's a provocation. Their most famous collision came on December 28, 2020 in the 3rd round of the PDC World Championship. Anderson trailed 3 sets to 2 before winning the final 6 legs without reply to take it 4 sets to 3, and then he found a microphone. Absolutely dire, absolute joke of a game. Everyone says, "Why do you get cheesed off with darts?" That's one of the reasons. Absolute bull. The frustration only grew from there. I'm sure there are 90% of folk watching at home who probably turned over and watched Corey or something. I would have. And then the retirement threat that neither the press nor the PDC could ignore. If that's how darts is going and that's how it gets played now, have fun. I'm off. I'm away for a game of golf. I'm not going through that again. The sharpest line came when Anderson pointed out something he had clearly been watching all match. Did you watch the last set or the third set? Was he slow then? No, he was not slow. The implication was clear. Suljović's pace arrived specifically when it suited him. There was also the side table incident. Before a dart had been thrown, Suljović placed his dart case on Anderson's allocated table, and COVID protocols meant they couldn't swap. My head was gone after the first set, Anderson admitted afterward. I'd lost the plot. Suljović pushed back, swearing on his children that he had never deliberately stalled, and calling Anderson his friend. Pundit Mark Webster offered the neutral view. What does Gary want him to do? Play into his hands and go quick with him? None of that changed Anderson's position. What made his stance interesting was that he had said in multiple interviews across multiple years that he would never slow an opponent down even if it cost him a third world championship. The frustration wasn't born from hypocrisy. It came from a man who held himself to the same standard and couldn't understand why everyone else wouldn't do the same. Everything about Anderson's philosophy, the pace, the purity, the absolute refusal to play games, needs to be fresh in your mind before number 2, because number 2 is Fartgate. November 16th, 2018, Grand Slam of Darts. Last 16, Wolverhampton. Anderson beat Dutch BDO player Wesley Harms 10 legs to 2, a comfortable win, a routine post-match, and then Harms sat down with Dutch broadcaster RTL7 and explained that a fragrant smell on stage had destroyed his concentration throughout the match. His exact words were, "It'll take me 2 nights to lose this smell from my nose." Anderson's response, delivered live on Sky Sports, became one of the most quoted post-match statements in the history of the sport. No paraphrase does it justice, so here it is, as close to verbatim as possible. "I thought he had shit. I thought Wesley had farted on stage. From there, you can put your finger up my arse. There'll be no smell there. I thought he had shit and I went, that's dirty." And then the denial itself. If the boy thinks I farted, he's 1010% wrong. I swear on my children's lives that it was not my fault. The line that sealed it. Usually if I fart on stage, I shit myself. Fartgate went global within hours. BBC Sport covered it, Vice covered it, Bleacher Report, the Mercury News, and dozens of international outlets. PDC chairman Barry Hearn was asked to comment and delivered. "We have no intention of renaming the event the Grand Slam of Farts, as some have suggested." Hearn also pointed out that referee Russ Bray could have been a third suspect, which helped no one. The timing made the whole thing stranger. This match took place 2 days before the Price final, which means the 2018 Grand Slam of Darts produced within a single week both the most physically confrontational moment in modern PDC history and the most olfactorily controversial. Anderson's credibility actually held up because he had, in a previous documentary, admitted to stomach problems on stage. "I had a bad stomach once on stage before and admitted it, so I'm not going to lie about farting on stage." The clip remains the most shared darts interview footage on the internet. November 18th, 2018. Grand Slam of Darts final, Aldersley Leisure Village, Wolverhampton. Anderson against Gerwyn Price, a former professional rugby player who had brought something to darts the sport hadn't really dealt with before. A physical, combative presence at the oche. The roaring, the fist pumping, the finger-to-lip celebration aimed directly at opponents. For most players, it was an irritant. For Anderson, it landed as something closer to a declaration of war. Anderson arrived at that final in the form of his career. 3 majors already won in 2018, and he built a commanding lead of 12 legs to 9. Price started celebrating louder. The crowd, heavily Scottish and behind Anderson, got louder in response. Around leg 15, Anderson confronted Price verbally, and the match shifted from darts into something harder to categorize. Around the 28th leg, with Price leading 14 legs to 13, Price let out a celebration and moved into Anderson's space, and that's when Anderson pushed him. Not violently. The DRA would later describe it as a non-aggressive push made after significant provocation, but on live television, in the final of a major, Anderson laid hands on another player for the first time in his career. Price won 7 of the final 8 legs and claimed the title 16 legs to 13. Anderson walked off without a handshake. He barely appeared for the trophy ceremony. Price's interview afterward was pointed. He can't handle playing me. He just moans every time I'm doing this, doing that. Concentrate on your own game. I'm throwing my darts. And then, I knew if I put him under pressure, he was going to crack, and he did. The DRA investigation ran for months. On January 23, 2019, the verdict landed. Price received a fine of £21,500, the largest in the history of the sport at that time, along with a 3-month suspended ban. Anderson received a formal warning. The DRA acknowledged the provocation but stated clearly, it is not acceptable for a player to lay hands on another player, irrespective of the provocation. Price appealed, and in August 2019, the fine came down to £11,500. Price told the Darts Show podcast he was shocked that Anderson had received absolutely nothing for the push. Anderson never expressed regret publicly. 2 years later, on January 3, 2021, they met again in the World Championship final at Alexandra Palace, this time in front of no crowd due to COVID restrictions. Price won 7 sets to 3 and became world champion, and this time Anderson was the first to congratulate him. Getting beat in the final is disappointing, but I'll give myself a pat on the back for getting this far. By 2023, when Anderson beat Price at the Grand Slam, commentators noted the atmosphere between them had shifted entirely. The man Price had once said, "can't handle him," was, years later, shaking hands without drama and moving on. None of that rewrites what happened in 2018. The push, the fine, the non-handshake, the months of investigation. The 2018 Grand Slam final between Gary Anderson and Gerwyn Price remains the most intense, most scrutinised, and most talked about moment either man has produced on the darts stage. 7 players, 7 collisions, and 1 thread connecting all of them. Anderson has never started a feud for the sake of attention. Every incident on this list, the chin tickle, the push, the cheat accusation whispered on live television, the retirement threats aimed at a man who plays too slowly, traces back to the same belief he has held and stated throughout his entire career. Darts is a throwing sport. You throw your darts, you step aside, you let the other man throw his, and you do not slow the match down, stand in someone's space, bait them, taunt them, or, and this really does need to be said, get accused of using biological warfare at the oche. In a sport that has leaned harder into entertainment, personality, and spectacle, with every passing year, Anderson has stayed exactly who he is. The most naturally gifted thrower of his generation, and the most difficult man in darts to play against, not because he plays games, but because he refuses to. I just want to play darts. 7 words he has said in interviews more times than any journalist has thought to count, and every name on this list is there because in some way they made that harder than it should have been.